not, unfortunately for me.
Oh, it's too bad. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. I thought I was going to sit down there, but not tonight.
Do you want me to still do pages? So you can just, or it's up to you.
I think if you can, it's okay. If you can't, then I mean, like, if you feel like you don't want to, then I'll do
No,
it.
I can do
You're an expert, though.
the pages.
Yeah. You could do. Yeah, I know.
And
Good, I'm glad. You don't have to wear a mask. I will, but you can.
Oh, say shalom, shalom, bimromav. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael vimru amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom, bimromav. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael vimru amen. Oh, say shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen ve'amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. Huya say shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael vimru amen. Ve'al kol Yisrael vimru amen. Welcome, Hashanah Tovah. It's so, last year we were here and there were no faces, and now there's faces and they've got masks, but it's wonderful. We begin page 5. Please rise for Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. You can be seated. El Chai v'Kayam Tamid Yimloch Aleinu Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Amari Varavim. And we turn to page 6. Please join in wherever you want. It's really nice to hear people out there as well as see them. We have a ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Adonai Elohechem, emet, emet ve'emunah kol zot, ve'kayam aleinu, ki hu Adonai Eloheinu, ve'ein zulato, v'anachnu Yisrael, Middle of page 8. U'malchuto b'ratzon ki balu aleihem Moshe u'Miriam uvnei Yisrael l'chanu shira v'simcha rabba v'amaru chulam Michamocha beilim Adonai, Michamocha nedar b'kodesh, Nora tehilot osef eleh. Malchutecha ruvanecha, bokei hayam lifnei Moshe, zeli anu ve'amaru. Adonai yimloch leolam vad. V'nehemar ki fada Adonai et Yaakov, ugelo miyad chazak mimenu. Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
Page 9 on the left-hand side. Peace comes to us in the recognition that even in our weakest and most fragile moments, redemption can be achieved. The central image in this prayer is the sukkah of peace. The sukkah is a fragile structure, temporary and open to the elements. Peace is pictured not as a temple, solidly built, gilded, perhaps ornate, but rather as created out of the most fragmentary of materials, leaving us vulnerable and at risk. Page 9.
With your good counsel. Ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha, Baruch atah Adonai, haporeis sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 10.
Please rise.
Tikhu v'chodesh shofar b'kesel yom chagenu ki chok liYisrael hu mishpat lelohei Yaakov. Yikadol v'yikadosh Shemei Rabbah v'lamod yivarak yirutei ve'yamlich malchutei v'chayei hon u'vyomei hon u'chayei l'chol beit Yisrael Bagala uvizman karif vibru amen. Amen. Yehi shemei rabba mevarach leolam ulamei amayah Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitomam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu leila leila mikol birchata v'shirata tushbehata v'nechemata damiran be'alama v'imru amen. Silent Amidah begins on page 11.
And continues through page 17.
shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Vimru, vimru, amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
The blessing of shalom, page 16. When the blessing of shalom is lacking, however much we have of other blessings, wealth or power, fame or family, even health, these all appear as nothing. But when shalom is present, however little else we have somehow seems sufficient. Shalom means peace, of course, but it means so much more as well. Wholeness, fullness and completion, integrity and perfection, healing, health and harmony, utter tranquility, loving and being loved, consummation, forgiveness and reconciliation, totality of well-being. And even all of these together do not spell out sufficiently the meaning of shalom. But though we cannot accurately translate or adequately define shalom, we can experience it. Page 19.
Yikadal v'yikadash shemei rabbah be'alim adivarah kirutei ve'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uchayedecho beit Yisrael b'gala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevarach leolam ulamei elamaya yitbarach. Yitbarach v'yishtabach yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shemei dekucha prichu. Leila, leila, mikol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alema v'imru amen. Titkabal zalotahon uvaotahon dechol Yisrael kodam avuhon devishmaya v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba michmaya v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen.
It is definitely a totally different experience to stare out onto people for Rosh Hashanah. I never thought I would say that in a million years, but it's true, and it's lovely. Once Rabbi Elazar, son of Rabbi Shimon, was traveling home from the house of his teacher. He rode alongside the riverside on his donkey and was feeling happy and elated because he had studied much Torah. Lost in thought, he encountered an exceedingly ugly man who greeted him. "Peace be upon you, master." Rabbi Elazar did not return his salutation, but instead said to him, "How ugly this person is! Are all the people of your city as ugly as you?" "I do not know," said the man angrily, "but go to the craftsman who made me and say to him, 'How ugly is the vessel which you have made.'" Realizing that he had done wrong, Rabbi Elazar dismounted from his donkey, prostrated himself before the man, and said to him, "You are right. Forgive me." But the man replied, "I will not forgive you until you go to the craftsman who made me and say to him, 'How ugly is the vessel that you have made.'" Rabbi Elazar kept walking after him until he reached his city. The residents of the city came out to greet him, saying, "Peace be upon you, O teacher, O master," said the man to them. "Whom are you calling master?" Said they, "The person walking behind you." The man said to them, "If this is a master, may there not be any more like him in Israel." "Why?" asked the people. And the man related the encounter he had had with Rabbi Elazar. The people paused for a minute. "Nevertheless, forgive him," they said, "for he is a man greatly learned in the Torah." "For your sakes, I will forgive him," said the man, "but only if he does not act like this anymore." And in another land and time far, far away, it was the first day after the people of a village had ushered in the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. And the villagers should have been happy, but instead, everyone was upset. The emissary of the Tsar was coming to the village, and there was one thing that the people knew about the emissary of the Tsar. When he came to the village, it was never for something good. And it was certainly not a time to rejoice, since the Tsar was never friendly to the Jews. So on this day, everybody came into the village square to find out for himself or herself what the emissary had to say. "The Tsar mocks the God of the Jews," said the emissary. "You gather in your synagogues and you pray to your God. You say that your God knows everything, that your God can see everything, that your God is all-powerful, yet your God is invisible." The Tsar doesn't believe any of that. So the Tsar asks, "If what you say of God is true, then can your God become visible merely by wishing it so?" There was a hush among the crowd, and the villagers looked at one another. They were unsure of how to answer this question. If God is all-powerful and God is invisible, how can God see God's self? They wondered. Before he departed, the emissary said, "The Tsar gives you 1 week in which to answer his question. If at the end of the week you cannot come up with a satisfactory answer for the Tsar, then your synagogue will be closed, and you will have nowhere to go when your holy day of Yom Kippur arrives." The people were beside themselves. They didn't know what to do. All day and all night they considered the question, if God is all-powerful and God is invisible, how can God see God's self? Unable to settle on an answer, they finally did what Jews do when they can't answer a question. What'd they do? They turned their rabbi. They said, "Rabbi, the Tsar's emissary has come to us and left us with this question. If God is all-powerful," they also eat too, Deirdre. "If God is all-powerful and God is invisible, how can God see God's self?" The rabbi thought about it. He closed his eyes and he stroked his beard, and he was quiet for a long time. But no answer came to him. "I'll need some time to think about this," he said. "But we only have 1 week, Rabbi," the villagers cried. "The Tsar's emissary will return and he wants an answer. Otherwise, the synagogue will be closed and we will have nowhere to go for Kol Nidre, since back when the Tsar was around, there was no live stream." The rabbi went home. He studied and he prayed and he thought. But each passing day, he couldn't come up with an answer to the question of how God sees God's self. One day, after a long walk in which he was lost in thought, he was startled by one of the children from the Hebrew school who was following him home and called out, "Rabbi, why is it you look so sad?" The rabbi explained that for almost an entire week he'd been thinking about a very important question and had been unable to come up with an answer. "What's the question?" the child asked. "If God is all-knowing and God is all-powerful, but God is invisible, how does God see God's self?" The child smiled at the rabbi. "Oh, Rabbi, I already know the answer to that question. You taught us that answer to that question in Hebrew school." The rabbi was astonished. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Rabbi, don't you remember? You taught us that each person is created in God's image. So when God wants to see God's self, all God has to do is look at one of us. We are God's mirror." The rabbi hugged the child and thanked her. Then he gathered all the people into the village square. He shared with them the child's answer. "And so," he concluded, "if God wants to see God's self, all God has to do is look down upon one of us." When the emissary of the Tsar arrived, the answer was given. It satisfied the Tsar, and the people were able to go to the synagogue for Kol Nidre and celebrate the holiest day of the year together. I stood before you last year in a nearly empty synagogue in what we thought then was the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, filled with a film crew and equipment, hoping to share the warmth and the light of the holiday with you in a world that seemed like it was already pretty dark. We did not know then what a roller coaster these past 12 months would become. What has astonished me and weighed me down more than anything else, though, has been the anger and frustration I have seen boil over in so many destructive ways. And like in the first story of the rabbi who saw the unattractive man, people feel like they have not only the ability, but the right to express their anger and frustration in hurtful ways. This behavior seems like it has gotten only worse as the pandemic has stretched on. I am deeply saddened, but mostly exhausted from everything I see. Yes, we are dealing with many hard things. Yes, we are dealing with fear and frustration and disappointment and so much loss. Again. I can imagine that in many ways this is probably an even more disappointing high holidays for some of you than last year. However, it must be possible to at least see some of the positives of this year. We live in a country where the majority of us do not live under daily threat of violence. We can awaken in the morning, and most of us have access to running water, at least modest food, and heating and cooling. If you are over the age of 12, there is a vaccine against COVID-19 for you if you want it. There are millions of people who live all over the world who can only claim access to some of these things, and others can claim access to none of them. And yet in this country, many of us continue to want more and wish for something different, something better, not realizing that what we already have, in many ways, is the best in the world. Rabbinic tradition, which created the Judaism we know today, was also born in a tumultuous time, a time of fear and disease, government corruption, and death. Their prescription for living in dark times? Finding gratitude in the moment by reciting a blessing for everything you see and do. In fact, the rabbis tell us the ideal is to say 100 blessings a day, and each one reflects the gift of the life we do have in that moment. This goes beyond the blessings that we say over our food or our wine or in the prayers like we did tonight or will say tomorrow. There is a blessing for a rainbow, for seeing the ocean or another large body of water, for going to the bathroom successfully, and those who know when they don't go to the bathroom successfully, what a blessing it is when you can. Seeing old friends for the first time in a long time, one that maybe some of us could use these days. And there is a blessing upon seeing something beautiful, and you get to pick what that is. It can be a baby, it can be a tree, it can be an awesome Pokemon card, it can be whatever you want. Blessed are you, Adonai, ruler of the universe, who has such things in this world. And perhaps as a result of the Talmudic story I recounted earlier, there is also a blessing for strange or ugly-looking creatures. There's even one for those. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who makes creatures different. Whatever blessing is chosen, it is meant to be a reminder that everything is part of creation, including us, including that which we find ugly, but especially each person we see. As the wise child in the second story reminded us, we are each God's mirror, created just as we are for a purpose we may be discovering every day. Breaking a mirror is irreparable. And anyone who has done it can tell you that the cleanup is difficult. Let us, especially during this time, please be kind to each other, even though we are hurting and stressed. And maybe in this year ahead, instead of lamenting what we do not have and dwelling in our frustration, we can recognize the blessings reflected back at us every single day. Shana Tova. We're going to continue with Kiddush, and I'm going to grab the the grape juice for Deirdre, page 24. Please rise as you're able.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'am, v'romamanu mikol hashon, v'kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav. V'titein lanu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ahava et Yom HaZikaron Hazeh, Yom Teruah Mikra Kodesh, Zecher Zecher L'Tziat Mitzrayim, Kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. Kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. Udvaracha emet ve'kayam lad. Baruch atah Adonai, melech al kol haaretz, mekadesh Yisrael. Melech al kol haaretz, mekadesh Yisrael. Mekadesh Yisrael, v'yom hazikaron.
Amen. Bottom of page 24.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehiyanu v'kiyimanu Bazaman hazeh.
Page 25, Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'ateit gedula liyoser b'reishit, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'goraleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, umishtachlavim umodim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר ארץ, ומושך יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגוהר מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו ופסולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו. וידעת היום, והשב אותה אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. על כן נקבע לך אדוני אלוהינו, לראות מהרה בתפארת עוזך, להעביר גילולים מן הארץ, והללים קרות יכרתון. לתקן העולם במלכות שדי, וכל בני בשר יקראו בשמך, להפנות אליך כרישי הארץ. יכירו וידעו כל יושבי תבל, כי לך תקרא כל ברך, תשבע כל לשון. לפניך אדוני אלוהינו, יקראו ויפולו. ולכבוד שמך יקר ייתנו, ויקבלו כולם את עול מלכותך, ותמלוך עליהם מהרה לעולם ועד. כי המלכות שלך היא, ולעמיה תמלוך בכבוד. ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Page 27, you can have a seat.
לדוד, אדוני אורי ושמי ממי ירא, אדוני מלך חיי ממי אפחד. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אותה אבקש. שבתי בבית אדוני, כל ימי חיי. לחזות בנועם אדוני, ולבקר בהיכלו. לחזות בנועם אדוני, ובחר בהיכלו. קבל אדוני, חזק בימי סליפך, וקבל אדוני.
Let it go. Page 26, the blessing of memory. It is hard to sing of oneness when our world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone, and nothing but memory can fill the emptiness their passing leaves behind. But memory can tell us only what we were in company with those we loved. It cannot help us find what each of us alone must now become. Yet no one is really alone. Those who live no more echo still within our thoughts and words, and what they did is part of what we have become. We do best homage to our dead when we live our lives most fully, even in the shadow of our loss. For each of our lives is worth the life of the whole world. In each one is the breath of the divine. In affirming God, we affirm the worth of each one whose life, now ended, brought us closer to the source of life, in whose unity no one is alone, and every life finds purpose. This week in this community, we mark the art sites of the following people: Rose Ray Epstein, Thelma Cardin, Saul Weiner, Ben Altman, Meyer Mincer, Samuel Bob, Morris Queskin, Mel Rausch, Wallace Robbins, Esther Yavitz. Oh, this is the wrong list. Well, this was last week's list, so I'll go through it anyway because there are people on here that I know everybody is missing. Margaret Peggy Altman, this is last week's list. Norma Cranberg, Elsie Markovis Kolb, Charles Solomon, Mary Van Rissen, Jack Finkelstein, Kennard Fronsdahl, Samuel Bernson, Richard Friedman, Marilyn Hurwitz, Dr. Robert Bob Creamer, Simon Pugach, Irene Seidemann, Esther Firestein, Hyman Hacker, Henrik Lemon, Saul Louis Nagorner, and Dina Siev. And this week in this community, we mark the art sites of the following people. So this is starting last Friday night after sundown. Joseph Booth, Rose Fentish, Sarah Gendler, Rose Rosashine, Helen Sandler, Mary Zalk, Norman Rice, Maurice Bernstein, Hyman Heiferman, Lester Bookie, Martin Greller, Rose Fisher, Leonard Rosenthal, Benjamin Seatman, Anna Badower, Edward Glazer, and Jacob Gould. We also remember the recent passing of Marcia Greenberg, the beloved mother of Amy Brody. May all their memories always be for a blessing whenever possible. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 26. All those who are observing a yard site, all those who are mourning, please say along with me and please rise. And if it's your custom to rise in solidarity with the mourners, or to say Kaddish for people who have no one to say Kaddish for them, please also rise at this time. Page 26. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma Divra Kerute v'yamlich Malchute B'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chaye d'chol Beit Yisrael Bagala v'izman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mivarach Leolam Ulame Almaya Yit Barach v'yishtabach v'yit Pa'ar v'yit Romam v'yit Naseh v'yit Hadar v'yit Ale v'yit Halal Shemei Kudisha B'rechu La'ela La'ela Mikol Birchata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Da'amiran Be'alma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. May all the memories always be for a blessing whenever possible. You can have a seat. A few announcements, not too many. It's wonderful to see everyone who is here, and I'm glad that you came. If you had asked me last year whether I would be doing high holidays in person with 15% positivity rate in Polk County, I would have laughed at you, but the world changes, and I think we've done a pretty good job of trying to ensure everybody's safety for whoever is here. And I'm glad to see faces. I mean, when we first started getting together again in May, I don't think I realized how important it was to see you. And for those who I'm not seeing in person, I do see you in my heart. I don't know if you guys know this, but there's people who have their makom kavua, their fixed seat at the high holidays, and I can see you. I can see where you sit. I remember where you sit, and if you're not here in person, I can see you in my heart. And all those people who used to sit in those spots who we've missed over the past years because we've lost them, I can see them too. So with that, thank you for coming. We'll see you tomorrow. If you did not pre-register, please try not to come. If you're a congregant, there might be some spots for you, but especially second day, you should definitely come second day. But tomorrow's a little bit tight. And we would appreciate it if you would watch the live stream. Same with Yom Kippur, we're already pretty full, especially for Yom Kippur Day. We may reopen Kol Nidre, but that remains to be seen. So if you've already signed up, great, thank you. And if you have not signed up, please watch us on the live stream. And tomorrow there will be shofar blowing by Joseph Goodman, who is Andy and Dory Goodman's son. All shofar blowing will be done outside, so the cameras will follow the people, and that way we don't have to put a mask on the shofar, which doesn't really do much anyway because it's forced air. And second day of Rosh Hashanah, Justin Shane, our president, will blow shofar. And so if you want to be here and, or you want to be in person and hear the shofar and you aren't going to be in person for various reasons, we're also going to do shofar blowing at the cemetery this Sunday at Tashlich before we go up for Kever Avot. We apologize that we couldn't have kids services. We felt like it was too much of a risk given everything going on and because children are unvaccinated, or most children can't be vaccinated, to put it that way. So we have pre-recorded children's services for Rosh Hashanah. We will pre-record them for Yom Kippur. Benjamin did a great job. It's up on the website so you can see it. And he's also going to come to Tashlich on Sunday so that he can also do some songs with the kids and have a little bit of family festivity, and we hope that the families enjoyed what we were able to give them this year to make it a little bit more special, especially since we had to cancel family services at the last minute. Other than that, services tomorrow are at 9 a.m., and I trimmed it back a little bit, so hopefully it'll be a little bit shorter. No promises, but we'll do what we can do. And you might hear a little bit of David Bowie in the sermon. So with that, let's go to Yigdal. And we're on page 28.
Yigdal himchai ve'yishtabach Nimsa ve'enet el metziuto Echad ve'en yachid ke'yichudo Ne'elam ve'gam ein sof le'achduto Ein lo demut haguf ve'eino guf Lo na'aroch elav kedushato Kadmon lechol davar asher nivra Rishon ve'en reshit l'reshito Hino Adon olam v'chol notzar Yoreh gedulato umalchuto Shefa nevuato netano El anshe segulato v'tifarto Lo kam beYisrael kemoshe od Navi umabit et emunato Torah emet natan le'amoel Oya nevio neman beito Lo yachal Yifa'el ve'lo yamir dato Le'olamim le'zulato Zofer ve'yodea setarenu Mabit le'sof davar בקדמתו. גומר לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רק רשעתו. ישלח לקץ ימין משיחנו, לפתור מחכה קץ ישועתו. מתים יחייל ברוח חסדו, ברוך הדעת שם תהילתו. מתים יחייל ברוח חסדו, ברוך הדעת שם תהילתו.
Shana Tova. Thank you to Deirdre for leading a beautiful service, and thank you to our live stream crew for filming it all for everyone at home. Have a good night.